Recently, things have become increasingly difficult, and I'm in desperate need of advice. My mother married my stepdad when I was 16. Initially, everything appeared fine. He was pleasant enough when we were all together. However, I noticed a change in his behavior when it was just the two of us. He would make remarks about how I was lazy or not contributing enough around the house. I tried to ignore his comments and simply stayed out of his way. As time passed, the situation deteriorated. Whenever my mom wasn't around, he would criticize everything I did, from the way I handled chores, to the music I listened to and even how I dressed. Nothing I did was satisfactory to him. I attempted to talk to my mom about it several times, but she always dismissed my concerns. She would say things like, "Oh, he's just trying to help you become more responsible." Or, "I'm sure he doesn't mean it that way." The real issue began about 6 months ago when my mom discovered she was pregnant. My stepdad was ecstatic. He began discussing plans for the baby's room and expressing his excitement about becoming a father. Although I was happy for my mom, I couldn't shake the feeling of being left out. That's when the fabrications began. My stepdad started telling my mom various falsehoods about me, claiming I stayed out late when I didn't or that I was being disrespectful to him, which was untrue. I tried to defend myself, but it was always my word against his. My mom seemed uncertain and didn't know whom to trust. Last week, my stepdad announced his intention to remodel the house to create a nursery for the baby. He talked about knocking down walls and rearranging rooms. Initially, I didn't think much of it, but then the situation took an unexpected turn. 2 days ago, my mom called me for a talk. She seemed uneasy and avoided making eye contact. She began, "Honey, you're 19 now and becoming a man. We think it might be time for you to get your own place." I was taken aback and managed to stammer, "What? Why? Did I do something wrong?" She quickly reassured me, No, it's not that. It's just with the baby coming, we need the space, and you're old enough to be on your own. It will be good for you to learn some independence." Her tone and body language made it clear that this wasn't her idea. My stepdad was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, with a smug look on his face. That's when I realized he had orchestrated this. I tried to argue, explaining that I wasn't ready to move out. I'm still in community college and working part-time at a local grocery store. There's no way I can afford my own place right now. But my mom kept insisting that it would be good for me and that I needed to grow up. The worst part was when my stepdad joined in. He said, "You've got 2 days to find a place. We need to start the remodeling soon, and we can't have you underfoot while we're getting ready for the baby." 2 days? How am I supposed to find a place to live in 2 days? I have no savings, no knowledge about renting an apartment, and no one to stay with. All my friends still live at home too. Yesterday, I spent the entire day in a daze. I couldn't concentrate at work and kept making mistakes. My boss noticed and asked if everything was okay. I mumbled something about family problems and tried to pull myself together. When I got home, I overheard my mom and stepdad talking in the kitchen. My stepdad was saying it was high time I moved out and how I was holding them back. My mom sounded uncertain, but he kept talking over her, saying things like, "You've got to cut the cord sometime," and, "He'll thank us for this later." I wanted to barge in and tell them both off, but I knew it would be pointless. My stepdad has my mom under his control, and anything I say will just be twisted and used against me. 2 days ago, my mom called me for a talk. She seemed uneasy and avoided making eye contact. She began, "Honey, you're 19 now and becoming a man. We think it might be time for you to get your own place." I was taken aback and managed to stammer, "What? Why? Did I do something wrong?" She quickly reassured me, No, it's not that. It's just with the baby coming, we need the space, and you're old enough to be on your own. It will be good for you to learn some independence." Her tone and body language made it clear that this wasn't her idea. My stepdad was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, with a smug look on his face. That's when I realized he had orchestrated this. I tried to argue, explaining that I wasn't ready to move out. I'm still in community college and working part-time at a local grocery store. There's no way I can afford my own place right now. But my mom kept insisting that it would be good for me and that I needed to grow up. The worst part was when my stepdad joined in. He said, "You've got 2 days to find a place. We need to start the remodeling soon, and we can't have you underfoot while we're getting ready for the baby." 2 days. How am I supposed to find a place to live in 2 days? I have no savings, no knowledge about renting an apartment, and no one to stay with. All my friends still live at home too. Yesterday, I spent the entire day in a daze. I couldn't concentrate at work and kept making mistakes. My boss noticed and asked if everything was okay. I mumbled something about family problems and tried to pull myself together. When I got home, I overheard my mom and stepdad talking in the kitchen. My stepdad was saying it was high time I moved out and how I was holding them back. My mom sounded uncertain, but he kept talking over her, saying things like, "You've got to cut the cord sometime," and, "He'll thank us for this later." I wanted to barge in and tell them both off, but I knew it would be pointless. My stepdad has my mom under his control, and anything I say will just be twisted and used against me. So here I am, sitting in my room, desperately trying to figure out what to do next. With less than 24 hours to come up with a plan, I'm completely at a loss. I can't afford an apartment, have no nearby relatives who could take me in, and I don't even know where to start looking for a roommate. I've considered reasoning with my mom one last time, but I'm worried it will only make things worse. My stepdad will likely accuse me of trying to manipulate her. I've also thought about refusing to leave, but I'm unsure what the consequences would be. Could they legally kick me out? Would they call the police? I don't want to cause a big scene, but I also don't want to end up homeless. Part of me wants to pack a bag and leave tonight, but I don't know where I would go. I might be able to crash on a friend's couch for a night or two, but that's not a long-term solution. I feel like my entire world is falling apart. This is the only home I've ever known, and now I'm being forced out with no warning and no support. I'm furious at my stepdad for orchestrating this, hurt that my mom is going along with it, and terrified about what will happen to me. I keep thinking about all the things I'm going to miss: the smell of my mom's cooking, the familiar creaks of the floorboards, even the stupid arguments with my stepdad. It might not have been perfect, but it was home. And what about the baby? I was actually looking forward to being a big brother, even if it was going to be strange. Now I might not even get to know my little sister or brother. Will my mom and stepdad just pretend I don't exist? I'm trying to stay calm and think logically, but it's incredibly difficult. Every time I start to make a plan, my mind blanks out with panic. How am I supposed to juggle school, work, and finding a place to live all at once? And even if I do find somewhere, how will I afford it? I've spent hours scrolling through rental listings online, but everything is so expensive. Even the cheapest studios are far beyond my part-time salary, and most places require first and last month's rent plus a security deposit. Where am I supposed to get that kind of money? I've thought about dropping out of school to work full-time, but that feels like giving up on my future. I've worked so hard to keep my grades up and I don't want to throw that away, but I can't see how I can continue attending classes if I don't have a place to live. The more I think about it, the angrier I get. This isn't fair. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not a bad kid. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I've never been in trouble with the law. I help out around the house. I get decent grades. I have a job. Why am I being punished? I keep replaying conversations with my stepdad in my head, wondering if I could have done something differently. Maybe if I had stood up to him more or if I had tried harder to bond with him, things would be different. But deep down, I know that's not true. He made up his mind about me a long time ago and nothing I could have done would have changed that. I've thought about reaching out to my real dad, but we haven't spoken in years. He left when I was little and has never shown much interest in being part of my life. I don't even know if he'd answer if I called. As for other families, my grandparents passed away a year ago and I don't really know my aunts and uncles. They live in different states and we've never been close. I can't imagine any of them would be willing to take me in. The most difficult part is the overwhelming sense of isolation. I can't discuss this with my mom because she has clearly chosen her side. My friends try to be supportive, but none of them truly grasp what I'm experiencing. They all seem to think that moving out is some exciting adventure, not realizing that I'm being pushed out without any preparation or place to go. I've considered posting on social media to ask if anyone knows of a cheap room for rent, but I'm too embarrassed. I don't want everyone knowing my situation or thinking I'm a failure who can't take care of himself. As time passes, I'm becoming increasingly desperate. I've started looking at ads for roommates, but most of them prefer someone older or with a full-time job. I've even thought about sleeping in my car for a while, but I don't know if that's safe or even legal. I keep hoping that my mom will come to her senses, realize how insane this is, and tell my stepdad to back off. But every time I see her, she just gives me a sad pitying look and asks if I've found a place yet. It's like she's already given up on me. I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, about to be pushed off. I'm not prepared for this. I lack the skills and resources to live independently. I'm terrified of ending up homeless or having to drop out of school. If anyone has gone through a similar situation or has any advice, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm running out of time and options and I don't know where else to turn. Thank you for reading this far, and I apologize for the lengthy post. I just needed to get it all out. Update. Hey everyone, I can't believe I'm writing this update. So much has happened in the last 24 hours, and my head is still spinning. I want to thank everyone who responded to my original post with advice and support. It really helped me get through a tough night. After I posted, I was still panicking about what to do. That's when I remembered my grandma's sister, who has always been like a godmother to me. I hadn't thought of her at first because she lives pretty far away, but I was desperate and decided to give her a call. As soon as I explained the situation, she got really quiet. Then she said, "Don't you worry about a thing, sweetie. You don't need to go anywhere. I'm coming there tomorrow and we'll sort this all out." I was confused but relieved. I tried to tell her it wasn't necessary for her to come all this way, but she insisted. She told me not to say anything to my mom or stepdad and just act normal until she got here. The next day, my stepdad was growing more impatient. He repeatedly asked if I'd found a place yet, making comments about how I needed to be out by the afternoon. I kept my head down and told him I was still looking. At around 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. My stepdad answered it, and I immediately recognized my godmother's voice. She sounded unusually angry, which was strange because she's usually very calm. She marched into the living room where my mom and I were sitting and announced, "We need to talk, all of us now." My stepdad tried to argue, saying it was a family matter, but my godmother shut him down. "I am family," she declared. "And I have something very important to tell you all." That's when she revealed the shocking news. She looked directly at me and said, "Honey, this house is legally yours. Your grandmother left it to you in her will. You're the owner, and no one can force you to leave." I was stunned. My mom was equally shocked, and my stepdad's face turned red with anger. He began sputtering, claiming it couldn't be true, but my godmother pulled out some documents from her purse. She explained that my grandma had amended her will shortly before she passed away. Apparently, she'd been aware of my mom's relationship with my stepdad, which had begun before their marriage, and she didn't trust him. Concerned that he might take advantage of my mom and me, she decided to leave the house to me to ensure our protection. My mom was in tears, questioning why she had never been informed about this. My godmother clarified that the changes were made quickly and secretly while my grandma was on her deathbed. She had promised my grandma to keep it a secret unless it became absolutely necessary. Now, looking at my stepdad, she said, "It's necessary." My stepdad completely lost his temper. He started yelling about how it was unfair and how we had deceived him. He even tried to snatch the papers from my godmother, but she quickly pulled them away. That was when I finally found my voice. I stood up and firmly told him to stop. I declared, "This is my house, and I won't tolerate you acting like this here." Saying it felt strange but also empowering. For the first time I felt like I had some control over the situation. My mom was still crying, torn between me and my stepdad. She looked confused and conflicted. I felt sympathy for her, but I was also angry that she had gone along with his scheme to kick me out. After things calmed down a bit, we all sat down to talk. My godmother explained the legal details, and it turns out I've been the owner of the house since my 18th birthday. My stepdad kept trying to argue, but there wasn't much he could say. In the end, I made a decision. I told them that I was willing to let everyone stay in the house, including my stepdad and the baby when it comes, but I had conditions. First, my stepdad had to start treating me with respect. No more criticism, no more lies to my mom about me. Second, we all had to go to family counseling to work on our relationships. And third, any major decisions about the house had to be discussed with me first. My mom agreed right away. My stepdad wasn't happy, but he didn't have much choice. It was either accept my terms or leave. It's been a few days now, and things are still tense. My stepdad barely speaks to me, but at least he's not being openly hostile anymore. My mom seems torn between guilt over what happened and relief that we're all still together. I'm still processing everything. It's weird to suddenly be the owner of a house at 19. I've got a lot to learn about property ownership and responsibilities, but I'm also feeling more secure than I have in a long time. I know we've got a long way to go before we're anything like a happy family, but at least now I know I have a place here, and no one can take that away from me. Thank you again to everyone who offered support and advice, and a huge thank you to my grandma, wherever she is, for looking out for me even after she was gone. I promise I'll do my best to take care of this house and make her proud. I slapped my mother-in-law. My husband scolded me and told me that I'm not allowed to do that to his mother. She and he are both racists. Hi Reddit. I made this throwaway because I need some help to know if I should apologize to my husband because yesterday I slapped my mother-in-law in front of him. For context, my husband is white and I am mixed. My mom is Puerto Rican and my dad is white. My mom has very dark skin and my dad is pretty fair. I'm pretty white passing, which for those who don't know, means you can't really tell that I'm Latina unless I tell you. A running mother-in-law joke is that melanin skips a generation because my maternal grandpa is also very fair but my maternal great-grandma is very brown. With that out of the way, I'll get into my situation. I have been with my husband for 7 years, married for 5. We have a 3-year-old little girl who is the light of my life. When she was born, she had a head full of dark brown curls, dark brown eyes and a fairly olive complexion. She looks like me when I get tan. You can definitely tell she's part Latino. Despite knowing all this, my mother-in-law has gotten it into her head that my daughter isn't my husband. She's been telling anyone who will listen that I must have had an affair because there's no way her son's child could be that color. Yeah, how nice. My mother-in-law has always been standoffish with me. She never made a big effort to get to know me and was always more polite than anything else. Mother-in-law has made some offhanded comments before about Latinos, but husband would brush them off because she's from another time. I wanted to write off her behavior as just her not being educated enough. I realize now that was my mistake because it gave her the okay to keep going. When my husband and I heard from my sister-in-law that mother-in-law was saying this, we invited her over to talk about this. I was really hoping we'd be able to fix this. However, what happened was my mother-in-law going on a rant for like 15 minutes. It consisted of her outing herself as a racist. Saying she knew girls like me couldn't control themselves, that she knew from the start what would happen. The nerve I had to pass my daughter off as her, also some very colorful slurs. Husband and I were frozen in shock because she hadn't even stepped into the house and was just screeching on our doorstep. What snapped me out of it was when she started to insult my mom, saying she probably did the same to my dad. I don't know what came over me next. I've never hit someone before. But I ended up smacking her so hard her glasses fell off. That's what got my husband to start talking. Or rather yelling at his mother and me for acting this way while mother-in-law started to wail. Yes, I shouldn't have hit her, I know. That's wrong. But hearing him imply I was in the wrong the same way mother-in-law made me more angry. I told him he's just as much a racist as his mom if he was trying to make me out to be as bad as her. I got my keys from inside the house while he was trying to calm his mom down and left. I drove to a hotel and spent the night there. Now it's the afternoon and I haven't left the hotel room since checking in. Husband and several other friends and Faye mother-in-law have been trying to reach me. I only replied to my sister-in-law to tell her I'm safe at a hotel and asked her to not tell my husband what hotel I'm at. Guilt is starting to sink in and I'm questioning everything. Like, did I allow my mother-in-law to do this? Did I showcase behavior that made her think I was cheating? Does my husband think I cheated and that's why mother-in-law has this in her head? And of course, should I be apologizing to my husband for hitting my mother-in-law? I know violence is wrong and I hate making excuses, but I just couldn't handle someone talking about my mother-in-law that way. So Redditors, should I be apologizing to my husband? How do we get through this? Any and all advice is appreciated. Edit, no. My daughter was not at the house. We sent her to have a weekend sleepover with my sister's mother-in-law. I'll be picking her up tomorrow afternoon. Edit 2, I have posted an update you can find on my page. Relevant comments. Constant Pen 4742. I would be scared to raise my daughter with that mother-in-law. I would do paternity just to shut down any ideas with the husband, but your marriage just took a hit and if he doesn't step up, it would be difficult to move on. OP answer, this is what I'm most afraid of. She's a kind of matriarch, so if we were to go NC, it would be with the rest of the Faye mother-in-law too. However, I don't want my daughter in the range of an environment where she can be subjected to passing and direct comments. I don't want her to grow up thinking she's less because of her heritage. Update 1, thank you to everyone who gave very insightful advice. I spent quite a bit reflecting and was able to get an emergency meeting with my therapist this morning. I only have my sister here as my parents moved back to Puerto Rico to be with my grandparents 5 years ago. Some questions I want to answer real quick. How old are we? My husband is 28 and I just celebrated my 30th birthday. We met when he was 21 and I was 23. Where was my daughter? I sent her to my sister's on Friday for a weekend sleepover with my sister's mother-in-law. I picked her up Monday afternoon and we had a little mommy-daughter time going to her favorite place, Costco. Yes, my 3-year-old loves Costco. We got home around 7 after we had dinner. My husband was waiting and I told him we'd talk after kiddo went to bed. When she was for certain asleep, we sat and had a long conversation not just about the fight and his mother, but also race and culture. I saw how my Faye mother-in-law was treated based on skin color, and while my husband understands racism, he admitted to never really grasping the complexities, especially colorism. A lot of you jumped to me taking my daughter and leaving or telling me he'd leave me. Sorry to disappoint, but no, we're not getting a divorce or anything of the sort. He apologized to me for not standing up for me before and then, acknowledging he didn't want to think of his mother in a racist light. I also apologized for hitting her because in the end, no, it doesn't help us. He did forgive me and said if it wasn't his mom saying it, he'd probably slap them too. We will be going to a marriage counselor, we decided, hoping to find one that specializes in interracial marriage. Our daughter is going to face challenges in the future because of her race. It's sad to say, but unfortunately racism is still alive and we want to know how to protect her and uplift her so she does not feel ashamed of her heritage. We've made the decision to go no contact with her and any people who try to bridge communication between us and her. She will have no contact with my daughter unless it's years down the road and she shows significant changes in her behavior. My husband will be driving to her house tomorrow to inform her of our decision. I'd consider a paternity test and DNA test, but only if mother-in-law pays. I don't want to entertain this on my own dime. We've also decided to not make any public posts regarding this. If people want to believe her story, that is on them, not us. My husband knows our baby is his. The irony is she looks more like him than me. Her curls are even from him. I do hope this is my last update. If anything else happens, I might come back. Thank you again to everyone who gave valuable advice. I am sad my daughter won't have a grandmother in the States, but it's more reason for us to plan trips to PR. Relevant comments. Icy_spinach_48. You dealt with this very well. People on here are too quick to suggest divorce over every problem they read about. Well done to both of you for tackling it maturely. I wish you both the very best for the future update. Hello everyone. I think I jinxed myself by saying in my first update, I hope this will be my last post, because unfortunately, for a lack of a better term, shit continues to hit the fan. For those of you saying I should be arrested for slapping my mother-in-law, I hate to disappoint, but she is not pressing charges. This is all thanks to my husband who said he'd expose my father-in-law's various affairs. Yes, it turns out that my father-in-law cheated numerous times on my mother-in-law until his death 2 years ago. According to hubby, he was paying for sexual favors even on his deathbed. This is deeply disturbing because father-in-law and mother-in-law appeared to have a loving marriage. Apparently, that was just for show. I can't even begin to imagine how hubby is feeling. We talked about it and he said it's something he felt deep shame for keeping from me, but also shame because his parents' marriage wasn't at all what they pretended it was. Husband and I are still looking for a couples therapist who specializes in interracial marriage. Husband is also looking for a therapist of his own after the conversation with mother-in-law opened his eyes to a lot of other traumas and issues he feels haven't been properly worked through. I'm so proud of him for taking these steps. Now on to how the conversation on Wednesday went, which is of course why I made this update to continue to vent. As I said in my first update, husband went over to mother-in-law's house to inform her that her behavior is unacceptable and will be going no contact for the foreseeable future. Mother-in-law didn't take this well. The irony is that she told husband that he couldn't keep her from her only grandchild. Funny because she spent the week claiming our daughter wasn't his. She threw some colorful insults at me, claiming he was never like this before he met me and that this was all my idea to hide my apparent affair. In response, husband said if she's so certain that I'm cheating and that our daughter isn't his, she can pay for a paternity test and a PI to find my affair partner. You know, an affair partner that doesn't exist. Husband says mother-in-law's face turned a comical shade of red and he swears there was steam coming from her ears. This is when mother-in-law said she'd press charges and husband said he'd just tell everyone about father-in-law's serial cheating. Mother-in-law apparently burst into tears then, got down on her knees, wailing he couldn't leave her. Hubby just pushed her off and left. I had already blocked her number so she couldn't contact me, but she blew up husband's phone till he came home and he blocked her. Husband is going to be sending her an email, reiterating what he said about NC, and until she proves she's gotten help, understands she was wrong, and apologizes, she won't be seeing any of us. Both of my husband's sisters called us to get the scope of the problem and agreed to set the record straight with anyone who tries to get a hold of us for mother-in-law or tries to echo her conspiracy theories. Anyone who wants to back her up can crowdfund for a paternity test and private investigator. We've spent too long building up our finances to waste them on the ravings of a mad woman. Husband and I did read comments on the posts. I did tell him about it and show him, and we both thank you for the support and helpful comments. Husband has a special message for those doubting me and saying I should get arrested, get fucked incel. I love this man so much and I'm so lucky to call him my husband and the father of my little girl. We'll be celebrating mother-in-law being out of our lives by taking our daughter out to Texas Roadhouse, eating an ungodly amount of rolls, and seeing Despicable Me 4. Wishing everyone love and thank you again for all the support. Edit. I forgot to add this too, but she also threatened grandparents' rights on the grounds that I endangered my daughter by taking the medication I use for my autoimmune disease during pregnancy. We doubt she'll actually go forward with that, but we will consult a lawyer regardless. Relevant comments. Do Coffee 6106. It sounds like you and your husband have been through an incredibly challenging and emotional time. It's great to hear that you're both taking steps to address the situation with professional help and that you have a support system in place. OP answer, thank you. I feel equally blessed that his two sisters support our decision to go NC and won't be trying to defend or speak on mother-in-law's behalf. Snoowords 4839. Look up emotional incest. Mother-in-law needs therapy to stop trying to make your husband take the place of father-in-law. Start that fuck you binder. She may call Child Protective Services and tons of other problems. Make sure she isn't on any pickup list for your child. Most states, grandparent rights go nowhere when both parents are married. Cameras and documents. OP answer, thank you for saying the pickup list for daycare. Even though she's never picked her up before, I'm realizing that's a scenario and will be letting her daycare know. Gwynison. This is what I'm most afraid of. She's a kind of matriarch. So if we were to go NC, it would be with the rest of the family too. I'm glad OP and her husband appear to have decided this doesn't matter, because it doesn't. The mother-in-law only remains the matriarch who can dictate what the rest of the family do, cut off OP and husband over their no contact, if they agree with and allow her to do so. And as it seems so far, his own siblings are not going to do that. If they did, well then they're just awful racists like the mother-in-law, or at best enablers of it. So no big loss if they choose to ban them from the family, right?
Am I the A for defending a bride who left her groom at the altar after learning of his alleged affair, causing family turmoil and accusations? Okay, so boom, me and my husband attended a wedding. It was his cousin/niece's wedding. I'm not sure how to describe the relationship, but they were close growing up. The wedding was a bit unique. There was a brunch before the actual ceremony with the bride and groom. Then for an hour the wedding party left to get ready while all the guests were still at brunch, then the actual ceremony and the real reception was supposed to happen after. I thought everything was normal. At the brunch the couple looked happy and excited and a little nervous maybe. My husband had told me there had been a little drama leading up to the wedding because the groom's family insisted that the groom's ex should attend the wedding because they have a good relationship. The ex is an EMT and she apparently saved mother-in-law's life once. The bride didn't want the ex to attend but she caved in. At the actual ceremony, as you might have guessed from the title, the bride never showed. After a few minutes of awkward silence with the music playing as we waited for the bride's father came and told everyone she left. Groom was crying. The mother-in-law was screaming it was such a huge mess. At the reception they basically just told people to take boxes of food so it didn't go to waste. Since a lot of family was in town for the wedding, the bride's side of the family was hosting a reunion. At the reunion the bride said the reason she left the groom at the altar was because at the brunch the ex told her that she slept with the groom and apparently showed the bride a sex tape she made with the groom. Bride was distraught and left because she didn't want to marry a cheater. The groom's side of the family were slandering the bride on every social media platform possible. So the bride's side decided to fire back and they were publicly accusing the groom of cheating on her and it was just a big shit storm. Groom comes to the bride's house to try and clear things up. So the groom didn't actually cheat on the bride. The sex tape was from years and years ago. The groom's appearance just hadn't changed that much, so the bride believed the ex when she said it was recent. The ex was just trying to break them up. The ex confessed to it too. To my surprise, instead of everyone being angry at the ex, everyone turned on the bride. Her family was pissed at her for wasting money, being gullible, not letting the groom defend himself first. Everyone was yelling at her. I thought it was crazy, so I spoke up in her defense. I would have believed it too if there was video evidence plus the fact that she was practically forced into the ex attending their wedding. Now the whole family is against me and the bride and it's so awkward and everyone is acting cold. My husband is upset because she now feels like if someone accused him of cheating on me I'd just take their word for it, but I feel that's completely unfair. Mini update. Okay, so my hubby came back to the hotel room and I showed him a post because he knows I like using Reddit. I mentioned a specific comment to him where one Redditor asked me how we are sure the tape was old and that the groom and ex aren't just covering their affair up by lying and saying it's old. I told my husband and at first he laughed, but he started to think about the whole situation, I guess. While hubby was still at the bride's house trying to help with the situation after I left, the environment was getting too much for me, so I went back to the hotel. The groom had been groveling to the bride. Even though he was exonerated by ex admitting it was fake, he was still being very apologetic, which threw my husband off a bit. Like, even though he maintained he didn't cheat. Instead of the husband being angry about being left at the altar and publicly humiliated, he seemed to just want wife to forgive him. I thought this would be normal because the groom probably feels horrible about allowing the ex to ruin the day and hurt the wife like that, but my husband said it was unusual behavior for the groom. Apparently the groom is the high horse type and he would never apologize for a mistake that wasn't his. Husband knows the groom better than me, so my husband thinks it's plausible that the groom did cheat by the way he's acting, but he's not gonna bring it up because of how high tensions are and it might just make things worse. I also explained how and why I felt like my husband was being unfair to me by saying he thinks I'd believe anyone who accused him of cheating on me. He apologized and told me he was just stressed out earlier and he feels like we wasted money on this trip and went to see our kid for days over this wedding that got blown up over a lie. Bride texted me thanking me for defending her. Most of the slandering social media posts were taken down. The ex posted on social media playing victim. Well, not really, but she's posting like heartbreak stuff and those fucking depressed Bart Simpson memes, at her big age. The groom's mother pulled up the bride's house after I left and was threatening to burn the place down, because she was mad the bride humiliated her son over a lie because it was such a huge wedding he had many co-workers and stuff there. I feel like I'm missing something, but I'm tired and it's been a long ass day. Edit in question. A few people are saying I should show this post to the bride, but I'm a bit scared she won't react well to me putting her business online because I don't know her that well, but at the same time I feel like she might appreciate that most people are on her side. But also I don't really want her to see my conspiracy theory about how the husband actually cheated on her because there's no actual proof. Should I? Stepmom falsely accused me of assault to block my inheritance at 21. Dad believed her and cut me off. 7 years later, he learned the truth. When I was 21, my stepmother falsely accused me of assault to prevent me from inheriting my father's wealth. My dad believed her and cut me off. 7 years later, he discovered the truth. Hello everyone. My biological parents divorced when I was 9, and they shared equal custody of me. I spent weekdays with my mom, who lived near my school, and weekends with my dad. Despite their separation, both parents were always kind and gentle towards me. While I was sad they were not together, I understood they both loved me deeply. A few years later, my dad met Gina, who would become my stepmother. When I was 11, my dad introduced her to me. She seemed nice, and my dad was clearly happy. He hoped we would get along well. Gina had twin daughters, Emma and Emily, who were 14 at the time. Raised without their father, the twins were quite immature and would throw public tantrums if they didn't get their way. As an introvert, I quietly observed their behavior. After a year of dating, my dad and Gina decided to marry when I was 12. Even my mom attended the wedding. I was excited to have a new family member. Initially, I thought my stepmother and I got along well. However, a few months after their honeymoon, she told me one morning that she didn't really like me. She said we needed to pretend to get along for my dad's sake when he was around. She also told me to stay out of her way when he wasn't there because she couldn't stand the sight of me, as I reminded her of my mom. Hearing her harsh words broke my heart. I had genuinely liked her and hoped for a good relationship. The twins overheard her and later teased me, saying my dad didn't love me and preferred them. I remember crying and telling my mom about it. She immediately called my dad and gave him an earful. My dad assured her that my stepmom would never say such things and that I must have misunderstood her. The following weekend, when I visited my father, my stepmother appeared upset. She stayed silent in front of my dad, but as soon as he left, she angrily whispered to me, threatening that she would ensure I no longer had a dad in my life if I ever told my mom anything about her. She also warned that she would divorce my dad and take all his money, leaving him destitute if I didn't keep quiet. At just 12 years old, I was terrified for my dad, so I nodded in agreement. From that day on, Gina made it her mission to make my life miserable in every way possible. Being a child, I felt I had to endure it silently. Whenever we were alone, she would say hurtful things to me and I would stay silent, hoping she would eventually stop bullying me. She would insult my height and weight, calling me ugly. I hoped my dad would notice, but he never did. He believed Gina and I had a good relationship and would often force me to go shopping and eat out with her and the kids. She would use my dad's card to pay for our meals but wouldn't let me eat anything substantial at the restaurant. I was only allowed to have soup or dessert, no main course. I would sit there miserably, watching them finish their meals while crying quietly. I would return home hungry and she would force me to go to bed without eating. Many nights I cried myself to sleep, both hungry and exhausted from her cruelty. At that point, I was at my wit's end, scared, angry, and frustrated with both my stepmom and my dad. This is why I dreaded visiting my dad on weekends. Every Friday evening, I would try to avoid visiting by coming up with excuses like a stomach ache so I could stay with my mom. My parents started noticing, and my dad would call, expressing sadness at not seeing me. My mom would urge me to tell her if something was wrong, but I always kept quiet, still scared of Gina's threats. When I was 14, my dad decided to take the whole family, including me, on a trip to Greece. Initially, I didn't want to go, but my mother told me it was a good opportunity to travel and see the world, so I reluctantly agreed to join them. As usual, Gina pretended to be sweet and kind in front of my dad, asking about school as if she genuinely cared. I noticed she would subtly tease me in her sweet voice, making hurtful comments that wouldn't outright portray her as mean. For example, whenever I mentioned playing basketball, she would joke that I needed to be taller for that sport, even though I was quite tall for my age. She would then say I should focus more on studies if I ever wanted to be successful. The twins would smirk and call me names like meathead, even though I had better grades than them. My dad would notice but choose to ignore it. Whenever I expressed that her comments hurt me, my dad insisted she was just teasing and that I should lighten up. Gina would nod and tell my dad that I had no sense of humor and needed to learn to have fun. This continued throughout the vacation. One day, in a moment of anger when she and the twins were teasing me about my weight while I was trying to enjoy the pool, I decided to retaliate. I told the twins that their double chins were embarrassing, watching their faces fall. I then turned to Gina and told her she shouldn't wear a shrug over her bikini because her huge stomach was still visible, making her look like a penguin. Gina's face turned red with embarrassment, and she ran back to the hotel room. The twins started yelling at me, calling me sexist and saying how horrible it was for me to say such things about them. Later, my dad confronted me, clearly angry. He asked if I had really spoken to my stepmother and stepsisters like that, and when I admitted it, he lectured me about how he had raised me better and that I should never talk to a woman about her weight. I argued back that they were criticizing my weight, looks, and height, but my dad forced me to apologize to Gina, who had locked herself in the bathroom crying after what I said. Gina and the twins made a big show of accepting my apologies. When I got home, I told my mom everything. She spoke to my dad, who tried to blame me for the whole situation. My mother threatened to call CPS on him if Gina ever commented on my weight or looks again. This scared my dad, and after that, Gina never said anything to me. However, she and the twins would blatantly ignore me whenever my dad wasn't around, which I honestly didn't mind. When I was 16, my mom went away for a few days, so I stayed with my dad and Gina. Gina complained about having to cook for one more person, so on my last night, I decided to make dinner since my mom had taught me to cook from a young age to be independent. Gina wanted to invite some friends over when she heard I was cooking. I prepared the meal, set the table and served dinner. Everyone loved the food and praised me. My dad decided to do the dishes, so I went to my room. From there, I heard Gina and her friends talking loudly outside my window. Her friends were saying how lucky she was to have a nice husband and a great house. When they mentioned how nice it was that I cooked for them, Gina went on a rant about how annoying I was and that she couldn't stand seeing my face. She told her friends she couldn't wait until I was 18 so she wouldn't have to see me every weekend. When one of her friends mentioned again how nice I seemed, Gina admitted she had hoped I would fail at cooking so she could blame me for something. This shocked me because I was trying to be polite to her, even though I knew she hated me. As time went on, Gina's dislike for me only grew. During college, when I visited my dad for a few days at his insistence, Gina would completely ignore me. She would schedule family activities with just dad and the twins or her and the twins, leaving me at home. If I woke up late during my vacation, she would yell at me, calling me lazy and inconsiderate, even though I always cleaned up after myself. I knew I was always respectful to her because my dad would be furious if I wasn't. Despite being polite and careful not to upset her, it felt like nothing I did was ever enough. She was also inconsiderate of my privacy. She would loudly enter my room while I was sleeping, waking me up or barging in without knocking, making me extremely uncomfortable. She would randomly search my room and look under my bed for reasons unknown to me. She refused to pick up dinner for me but did so for the family, never inviting me to join them. Despite this, I kept quiet, tried to stay out of the way and spent time with dad whenever possible. Now, on to the main incident. When I turned 21, my dad invited me to visit him, saying he had some important news to share. It had been a while since I last visited, so I felt a bit apprehensive, but my mother encouraged me, saying it was good news. I agreed and booked my tickets. Upon arrival, my dad greeted me warmly at the airport, and we drove back to his place. I asked him about the news, but he said he would reveal everything during the family dinner. When we arrived, I noticed the twins were home too. It had been a while since I had seen Emma and Emily. They didn't acknowledge my presence, and I didn't acknowledge theirs either. That night, during dinner, my dad started by expressing how proud he was to have 3 wonderful children. He spoke about his gratitude for having such a loving family and wanted to share some exciting news. The atmosphere was positive, and I felt a sense of anticipation as he continued speaking. He looked at each of us with a smile, including Gina, who had been giving me icy glares all day. My dad went on to say that he had recently lost a friend to a heart attack, which made him realize how lucky he was to have us. He had spoken to a lawyer and made a will. Upon hearing the word will, Gina and the twins perked up with excitement. Dad said he had decided to leave the house to my stepmom, as she was his wife. Gina beamed with pride and kissed him on the cheek. My dad's house was a 5-bedroom place, and if Gina ever decided to sell it, she could make a fortune. Dad then announced he was leaving his entire retirement account and his car to me. This wasn't just any car, it was a vintage car he had spent a lot of time and money maintaining. The car held sentimental value for both of us, as he often shared stories of his youth and adventures associated with it. As I processed this information, I realized that leaving the car to me was his way of expressing his love. As my dad spoke about his pride in me inheriting the car, Gina's expression shifted from pride to discontent. She exchanged glances with the twins, who seemed equally displeased. It was clear that the idea of me inheriting a significant sum of money and the beloved vintage car stoked their resentment. Dad, apparently unaware of the tension in the room, continued to explain how he would leave the joint bank account he shared with Gina to the twins. Since Gina was a homemaker, the money was entirely my dad's. He expressed his wish for the account to be equally divided between them, assuring them they would have money and a house to live in. So they needn't worry if anything happened to him. I thought this arrangement was fair and had no issues with it. However, the twins immediately voiced their disappointment, saying they had expected more. They argued that my dad should also leave them his retirement account, claiming I didn't need it anyway. When my dad questioned their reasoning, Gina chimed in, stating that as a guy I should find my own way, whereas they were women and needed more money for financial security. My dad reminded Gina that he had already taken care of their college funds and now they were also getting a house and a bank account, so they had nothing to worry about. Despite this, Gina kept insisting that I didn't deserve so much money. My dad firmly reiterated that his decision was final. I sat quietly, observing as the argument escalated. Suddenly, Gina burst into tears. We looked at her, startled, and my dad reassured her that there was no need to cry since he had divided everything fairly. Through her sobs, Gina claimed she had kept silent for years to protect the family but couldn't hold it in any longer. The room fell into awkward silence, and my dad and I exchanged confused looks. Despite the palpable tension, he gently encouraged Gina to share what was weighing on her mind. Amidst her sobs, Gina began to recount how, a few years ago, I had supposedly tried to force myself on her, but she had kept it hidden to protect me. I was stunned, completely blindsided by the unexpected accusation. Before I could even grasp what was happening, Gina started elaborating on her fabricated story. She told my dad that after our vacation in Greece, where we had an argument about weight and height, I would constantly stare at her and attempt to enter her bedroom uninvited. I sat frozen in my chair as she continued to concoct tales of how I would try to barge in every time she took a shower or get uncomfortably close to her face when we were alone. She claimed she dreaded having me over every weekend because she feared I would behave the same way with the twins. I tried to defend myself, vehemently denying the baseless accusations and yelling at her for having the audacity to make up such lies, but Gina continued to cry as if she were the victim. She went on about how, as I grew older, I made her increasingly uncomfortable and, on one occasion when we were alone, I allegedly tried to force myself on her. My eyes widened in shock, and the blood drained from my face upon hearing such a serious accusation. My dad looked utterly confused and concerned, his eyes darting between me and Gina, clearly at a loss for words. Gina continued her story, claiming she had suffered in silence for years, afraid to speak up for the sake of the family. I yelled at Gina, calling her a psycho, insisting there was no way I had ever looked at her inappropriately, let alone touched her. Gina yelled back that she was done keeping her silence and needed to expose a monster like me. The twins began shouting furiously at me, accusing me of putting their mother through this and using words like rapist and molester. My head was spinning, and it all felt like a bad dream. I couldn't believe how a pleasant evening had turned into such wild accusations. I looked at my dad for support, but he remained quiet, clearly trying to process everything Gina had said. He asked her if what she had spoken was true, and Gina nodded, asserting that she would never lie to him about his own son and that, as his wife, he should believe her. While I tried to defend myself, my dad asked Gina why she hadn't spoken up earlier. She explained that she feared no one would believe her since I was a minor trying to do inappropriate things with her. As a stepmother who had married my dad, she felt people would dismiss her words. She claimed she had to bear this silently to protect the family. I was crying at this point, begging my dad not to believe her. I never imagined Gina could fabricate such atrocious lies, especially after what she had put me through over the years. Unfortunately, Gina's manipulation had strained my relationship with my dad, and he seemed torn between trusting me and believing his wife. The twins, influenced by their mother's narrative, supported Gina's false accusations and yelled at me to leave their house. I yelled back that it was my dad's place and they shouldn't believe their mother's lies. My dad, amidst the chaos, looked up at me and told me to leave the house until the matter was resolved. It felt like a punch to the gut. Being rejected by my own father, who chose to believe his second wife over me, left me hurt, confused, and betrayed. I packed my belongings and left the home I once thought was mine. I flew straight to my mother, who was shocked to see me at her doorstep. When I told her everything, she was furious and ready to confront my stepmom. But I asked her not to, knowing how unpredictable and dangerous Gina could be. If Gina could concoct such wild lies to get me kicked out of my dad's house because she was upset about the inheritance, she could do much more to ruin my life. I couldn't risk having her in my life any longer, which is why I decided to cut off my dad permanently. Since he chose to believe her, he didn't deserve to have me in his life. Later, my mom told me that my dad called her to express his shame in having a son like me and declared he wanted nothing to do with me. Despite her attempts to defend me, it was in vain. My dad's side of the family, convinced by Gina's story, also attacked my mom, accusing her of raising a pervert. I can't even begin to fathom the pain my mom felt hearing such words about her son. The damage was done, and Gina had won. I wish I could say my life improved after cutting her off, but it didn't. Gina and the twins continued bombarding me with vile text messages, threatening that I should stay away from my dad forever. It got so bad that I had to change my number to escape them. Even after that, things didn't get better. Gina's actions left me terrified of being around any woman, fearing I would be falsely accused again and lose my job and career. I was scared to meet anyone or go on dates. Throughout this ordeal, my mom stood by me and believed me. I went through severe depressive and suicidal episodes, and my mom flew in to live with me for a couple of months to make sure I was all right. Slowly, my mental health improved, and I started to rebuild my life. Eventually, I met a wonderful woman named Mara, who brought joy back into my life. She has completely changed my life and my mom adores her. Mara and my mom mean everything to me, and thanks to them I continue to live my life with purpose. Just a week ago I received a call from an unknown number. Thinking it might be Amazon, I answered. To my shock, it was my dad. I was stunned to hear his voice after nearly 7 years. He sounded old. When I asked how he got my new number, he dodged the question and asked if I was doing okay. I remained silent and then told him not to bother me again since I had nothing to say to him. That's when my dad broke down and started crying. He begged for my forgiveness, admitting how wrong he was to abandon his own son. My curiosity was piqued, so I waited for him to explain. My dad then revealed that Gina had been cheating on him with his best friend for years. When he confronted her with proof, she stopped hiding and confessed she was tired of being married to a pathetic man like him. Gina admitted she had only married him for his money and despised being with him. When my dad pressed her further, she confessed to fabricating all the accusations against me because she hated me and wanted all his wealth for herself and her daughters. As you can imagine, my dad divorced her, and she got nothing from the marriage due to her affair. Despite her lawyers fighting for alimony, my dad said he had been waiting to divorce Gina so he could officially reach out to me and apologize for what he put me through. He expressed his desire to make up for lost time and rebuild our father-son relationship. At the mention of father and son, I couldn't help but scoff. I told him that he was no father of mine after how quickly he abandoned me for his wife's nasty accusations. I told him I wanted nothing to do with him and that he should stop bothering me. I ended the call and hoped he got the message. Since then, I've been bombarded with calls from my dad and his side of the family, who I don't even talk to, saying that my dad has suffered enough and that I'm just making it harder on him. Their messages leave me feeling conflicted. Am I the bad guy for refusing to talk to my dad after he cut me off due to Gina's false accusations? Update 1, my post was locked, but hopefully it's okay now. I've posted the link and tried my best with spacing. I'm on mobile. To everyone who offered support and advice, thank you so much. Your words helped me see things more clearly. I'm not just furious at my dad for believing my stepmother over me but also for all those years she harassed me while he did nothing to protect me. I was just a child and she blackmailed and manipulated me while I kept quiet. I think it's time I open up to my mom and let her know exactly what I went through because I know she'll understand. Update 2. Hi everyone, it's been a week since my last update. For those concerned about my mental health, I'm doing okay. Thank you for your kindness. I booked tickets for my mom to come visit me so I could tell her and Mara everything. They already sensed something was up. I started by telling them about Dad's contact after all these years, which shocked my mom. She asked why he reached out, and I explained. She had no idea he had gone through a divorce and was furious at Gina for what she put everyone through. Then I told them about how Gina would manipulate me when I was just 12 years old. I recounted how she bullied me when Dad wasn't around and threatened to divorce him if I ever told him. I didn't realize how traumatic these events were until I began to open up about them one by one. By the time I finished, I had tears streaming down my face. Mara and my mom were crying quietly as well. My mom immediately hugged me, repeatedly saying that I shouldn't have kept this all in and that it was okay to share. I cried for half an hour while my mom held me. Mara also told me that no child should have gone through what I did and that it was completely fine if I chose never to speak to my dad again since he should have protected me. My mom nodded, saying I had no obligations to explain anything to my dad because when I needed him the most, he chose to believe his wife over me. The only reason he was reaching out now was that he was lonely and had no family left. That's when I realized they were right. My dad perhaps never really loved me because if he did, he would have never believed I was capable of such things. Since then, I've felt much lighter after sharing my past with Gina out loud with my mom and Mara. I've blocked my dad and will continue to block any other family member who tries to interject in my life. I owe no explanations to those who chose to abandon me. Update 3. Wow, it's been 6 months since I wrote this post, and I can't believe how much my life has changed since then. I want to start by sharing some happy news. I proposed to Mara, and she said yes. My mom is thrilled for us, and we're considering moving closer to her because the schools are better there. Since both of us can work from anywhere, it makes sense for our future family. Thanks to advice from people on Reddit, I've also started therapy. It's helping me feel better, step by step. I'm trying to focus on the positive aspects of my life, like Mara and my mom. They've always been there for me, and I'm deeply grateful for their support. The past has been tough, but I'm looking forward to a brighter future, free from all the lies and drama.
Am I the A to ask my husband to block his female friend who warned him not to marry me? She has no right to interfere in our wedding. I, 26 female, want my husband, 27 male, to immediately block one of his friends, Kyla, 27 female. He thinks I am overreacting, and wants opinions from some cool-headed people on if I'm just acting crazy, or this is something that would cross the line for you. My husband has a group of 8 friends he has been close with since his college days. Kyla is one of his friends. When my husband and I started dating, he introduced me to all of them, and everyone was very friendly. I used to hang out with them frequently. I am an introvert, and so is my husband. I would always ask him to spend time alone as being in social settings just saps all my energy away. His friends, and especially Kyla, always made it a point to tell me how he hangs out with them less after he started dating me. Kyla also had a weird energy around me. If I was with my husband, she would be the friendliest with me. However, as soon as he walked away, she acted like I did not exist. My husband hates to be touched by others, we both are neurodivergent, but Kyla would always tease him by trying to hug him, mess his hair, etc. I never felt she was flirting with him, but just teasing him to make him annoyed. Overall, she just feels like a person who has a severe social boundary issue. We got married 2 years ago, and things have been great between us. Last week, we had our second marriage anniversary and invited a bunch of people. His friends stayed back after all the guests left, and we were all drinking and chatting. One of his friends, Jen, became a bit tipsy and started complimenting me on how beautiful our house is, how I care for my husband, and how he has changed for the better since marriage. Everyone was laughing at my husband at how much of a slob he was when he was single. Jen then pointed at Kyla and said, "You better pay up 'cause you had bet that their marriage would not even last for 2 years. Everyone became silent and started changing the topic. I also did not want to spoil the mood, and let it go, but it stuck in my head. After everyone left, I asked my husband what Jen was talking about. He also had noticed Jen saying that and was ready with a full explanation. He told me the story of what happened when we got engaged. When he proposed to me, he had not told his friends that he was going to do that. We went on a trip to Puerto Rico, and he surprised me there. We put our engagement pictures on Instagram while we were on the trip, and it was a big surprise to everyone as we were only dating for 1 year. When he came back and met all his friends, everyone congratulated him. However, Kyla started ranting about how he was a fool to propose so quickly, and she felt that I was not the right girl for him. Seems like she said some unkind things about me, implying I was a gold digger. My husband's family is wealthy, but so is mine. She had said that she bet we would break up within 2 years if we got married. That is why Jen was taunting her about how happy my husband was with me. I was very furious at this point, as I feel this is something he should have told me. I asked him to tell me truthfully if he had ever dated Kyla or had any history with her, as he has always told me that he has never dated anyone from his friend group. He said that he has of course not dated or hooked up with Kyla. However, Kyla had asked him out a few times when they were in college, and he always politely declined. I asked why he said no to her, and he said he just does not have any romantic feelings for her. I can see that because my husband does have a type based on me or the other people he has dated in the past, and Kyla is the opposite of that. I am just mad at her for saying bad things about me, especially after knowing that we were already engaged and betting against my marriage. I told my husband that he needs to minimize contact with Kyla and she is not invited to parties at our house anymore. He feels I am being too harsh for something she said almost 3 years ago. He also pointed out that she has been very supportive to both of us, and also helped a lot during our wedding arrangements. He feels she is just blunt and forthright when she speaks, but does not mean those things. He told me to take some time and calm down, and we would revisit this topic in a week. He is worried this will completely change the dynamics within his friend group. Am I the A for wanting him to block her and stop inviting her to our house? Do you think I'm overreacting? I think betting against our marriage and bad-mouthing me behind my back seems like a huge betrayal. I am also mad at my husband that he kept this fact from me, and also never told me that Kyla asked him out during college days. Am I just being crazy and reactive? How would you react in this situation? I don't want to distance my husband from his friends, but I also do not want to see that bitch Kyla's face again. Relevant comments. Commenter. Info. How has Kyla acted since the wedding? Has her behavior changed? You describe a bad behavior in the past tense, so one might believe she's not doing those things anymore. Does she still exhibit boundary issues with your husband? OP. Yes, Her behavior with my husband has not changed at all after marriage. However, she is the same with all other friends too. With me, she is fake nice, where she acts like we are best friends in front of my husband and barely talks to me when he is not around. Commenter: what did he think when you told him that she's totally different when he leaves? OP: he just says she does not know you that well, just ignore her. She has never said anything negative to my face. However, as a girl, you just know when someone does not like you. It's hard to explain to him that it's your feeling and not based on anything she has specifically said or done. Commenter: on blocking her. Especially with the physical contact too. She's so clearly into the husband, and the fact that he's not shutting it down means he likes the extra attention from her. It's one thing to get a friendly hug or maybe an occasional touch on the shoulder from a platonic friend, but shit like playing with his hair. That is 100% flirty behavior. And the fact that he's not shutting it down himself is gross. OP. I have to reply here. So my husband is physically allergic to people touching him. He has a startled response, either he jerks them away or tenses up, when someone hugs him and his face turns red. The weird thing is he can hug his parents or sister and does not get the reaction. He never had that issue with me, even when we first started dating. However, even if my sister or parents hug him, he gets that response. So the fact that he shuts down any touch from Kyla is an understatement. Mini update in comments. Just remembered about my post and logged into the account after many months. Things were really horrible for the last few months and that bitch Kyla almost ruined my life. I don't even know how to describe it. I might write about it next week as I saw a lot of messages asking for an update. I just want other women to be careful of such snakes. Update post. I had posted almost 6 months ago regarding my husband's friend Kyla betting that our marriage would not last for more than 2 years. I was upset and had asked my husband to stop talking to her, because she disrespected our marriage. Since then, Kyla has pulled some really pathetic shit to stir up issues between my husband and I. After I wrote the post, my husband was trying to convince me that Kyla was just joking when she made those comments, and it happened so long ago. Kyla messaged me the next day apologizing for her comments and also not making more efforts to connect with me. I accepted her apology and started warming up to her. She started inviting me for brunches and girls' night out with them, and I felt included in their friend group. One day during brunch, I brought up why Kyla really thought our marriage would not work out. Kyla told me that my husband broke up with his long-term ex-girlfriend Joanna 2 months before he started dating me. I knew that part, but Kyla told me that my husband was really heartbroken after the breakup and swore to her that he would stay away from dating anyone. When he met me, my mom set us up on a blind date. She was surprised how quickly we hit it off. Kyla thought that I was his rebound relationship, but when he proposed to me within a year, she was worried that he was making a very rash decision. My husband's family is rich, and she thought it was unwise for him to marry so quickly without knowing me well. She did not know enough about me and that my family is also very well off. That is why she was concerned that I was taking advantage of his vulnerable state. She apologized to me and said that it was wrong for her to assume that, and over the years, she has seen how happy we are together. I appreciated her honesty, and Kyla and I became good friends since then and started hanging out more frequently. Around 2 months ago, my husband went to a conference in Seattle for 3 nights. After he came back, I got a "hey girly" message on Instagram from Joanna, his ex. She told me that my husband contacted her a few months ago and they met in Seattle during the conference, and she could give me more proof if I wanted. I went through my husband's Instagram, but he seems to have blocked her. I made a mistake of mentioning it to Kyla, as she was the only person honest to me about Joanna, and she went into detective mode to help me. She was still friends with Joanna on Instagram, as they all went to college together, and opened her profile. The message sent to me was from a different profile, with no followers. We checked her photos, and we saw that she attended the same conference as my husband did in Seattle. Kyla suggested I should ask Joanna for more proof and also ask my husband about the same before assuming the worst. I asked my husband if he met Joanna, and he said yes. He told me he just met her in the expo hall and chatted with her for a few minutes. I asked him why he did not mention it to me, and he told me it was just a quick conversation, and he did not think too much of it. He asked me how I knew it, and I told him that Kyla mentioned that she saw her pictures at the conference, and I thought he might have seen her. I messaged Joanna again to share more proof. She told me that they have been chatting for the past 2 months and plan to attend the conference together. She shared a log of their messages, where my husband was actively flirting with her. The screenshots did look legit, but I did not see any of those messages in my husband's Instagram profile. I talked to Kyla about it, as I did not know what to believe. I messaged Joanna to tell us what happened between them, and she told me that he invited her to the room at nights and they hooked up, but she does not have any photos as he insisted. They do not take any pictures together. I immediately realized it was fake and messaged Joanna to fuck off. She kept on insisting they were telling the truth, and she spent the nights with my husband in his room on all 3 nights. I told her that my husband and I were playing video games, Sea of Thieves, for almost 2-3 hours each night after his dinner, as that is what we do to catch up when he is away. Unless Joanna was sitting behind him watching us play until he fell asleep, she was full of shit. I also told my husband about the whole incident and he told me I should have come to him sooner. He told me that he has gone no contact with Joanna ever since they broke up and he just ran into her at the conference. He told me I could check his phone and everything to verify that he has blocked her everywhere. I told him I do not need to, and Joanna might have run into him and just decided to fuck his life by making up stuff. When all the friends met that weekend, my husband and I told everyone about how Joanna sent messages to me and faked everything. Kyla was also telling what happened as she had told her about it. Kyla accidentally let it slip out that it's luckily, we are nerds and played video games at nights before sleeping, else, props go to Joanna for making up a convincing story. I never told Kyla about the video game stuff. I just told her Joanna is full of shit and I blocked her. It took me until I came home to connect the dots. I told my husband about it and he confronted Kyla. She denied it and told him that I told her about the video game stuff on a phone call, but I don't remember doing it. We have since decided to keep our distance from Kyla. Kyla has called me multiple times to meet up, but I just make up reasons that I'm busy. I do not know why she did it, but at this point, I am not interested in it, and we have decided to just see her on social occasions and avoid hanging out with her as much as possible. I feel stupid that she played me for a fool, and I should have not gone to her when Joanna started messaging me. In hindsight, it seems suspicious that Kyla started telling me about Joanna and at the same time, Joanna claimed to have an affair with my husband. I do not know what her intentions are, but I am mad enough that I will avoid her as much as possible. I wish I had some real proof that she was the one messaging me, so that I could expose her. I also feel bad for suspecting my husband. But I am glad my husband and I are on the same page now. Relevant comments. Commenter, does your husband also believe that Kyla made up a fake Instagram account, pretending to be Joanna? Because that's pretty psycho behavior. OP, yes. He believes me because I told him that I never told Kyla why I thought the account was fake. It's possible she guessed it if I ever mentioned to her that we play video games at night, but it seems suspicious she would guess that was exactly the reason why I realized the account was fake. Commenter, why didn't you try to message her real Insta since you knew the one she used to message you wasn't her main? Why not message her main account? That would have cleared it up pretty quick, I would think. Commenter, why didn't you try to message her real Insta since you knew the one she used to message you wasn't her main? Why not message her main account? That would have cleared it up pretty quick, I would think. OP, her Instagram was private. I did not want to follow her as it would have looked really bad for me to add her, when my husband has blocked her. The only way I could see her Instagram was when Kyla showed it to me on her phone. To another commenter, trust me, I thought about this. Firstly, I will look crazy if I reach out to Joanna, my husband's ex, behind his back. Secondly, even if it was her messaging me, she would just lie and tell me it was not her. I also cannot disregard the fact that I started getting messages a week after my husband ran into her and told her that he was happily married to me. I have to accept that Kyla, if it was her, will get away with the BS. We do not have any proof it was her, and all we could do is distance ourselves from her. Commenter, why did you lie to your husband about the fact that this woman had messaged you in the first place? You are the problem here. OP, agree, I should have told him right away. I tried to be sneaky to know if he really met her at the conference. I was half expecting him to deny it if he was trying to hide something happened. I think I let my insecurity get the worst of me. Lessons learned. Commenter, did he bring a gaming PC or Xbox with him to a work conference? OP, we both use Steam Decks to play games together when he is away.